I Want to Jump Like Dee Dee, with me, Giles Sibbald, is the music podcast that does music a bit differently. I'm talking to some incredible musicians, DJs and producers about how they use an experimental mindset to fuel their own creativity, pursue new challenges, overcome fears, bounce back from mistakes. Music, it's always been a massive part of my life, and I've long loved delving through the racks, old school and now Spotify, sort of new school, looking for new stuff, new music. But I don't think I've ever felt so positive about the music that's being created today. And one band for me that has opened up a world that kind of fuses the subversion and sort of aftermath of the years that followed punk with the after hours sort of stripped back, defiant underground counterculture vibe of Miami's Kitchen Club and New York's Mud Club or Danceteria, and sort of flipped it forward to now is Sink Your Teeth. And Maria Uzor is one half of Sink Your Teeth, and she's just released her own solo LP called Innocence and Worldliness. And it's really a magnificent sort of creation. And I was lucky enough to interview Maria over the summer for Moo magazine. And I'm really pleased that she's here today. So Maria, welcome, and thanks so much for coming on.
Hey Giles, how are you? And thank you for having me. Thank you.
Not at all. I can't believe that you sort of came back after being subjected to the Moo magazine interview. So that's kind of fantastic.
I missed that. You forced me into it. No, I actually faked it. So.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, that's it's always a relief when somebody sort of comes back for another interview after go through one thing. So that's terrific. I mean, if we start off like just on I mentioned about the solo work. That is, I mean, like I said, I think it's like magnificent. I really loved it. It feels like a little bit more kind of like sort of dark wave, sort of fused with some of there's a lot of influences in there, and it's so difficult to categorize, which I think is a good thing, because the sort of the fusion of these kind of minimalistic, sort of public image metal box sort of thing, with some with these really kind of pulsating dance grooves, it works so well.
Oh, thank you.
How did I mean that sort of process was, kind of writing process was kind of like about it sort of started in lockdown, if I remember.
Yeah, I didn't write for about a year in lockdown, when lockdown first started. Or well, for about 9-10 months. I wasn't feeling creative at all, didn't have any ideas. I kind of tried to not beat myself up about it, because I think, like, when you're an artist, you're sort of so used to, the focus is always on output, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? I think it's really important for your mental health to realize that you need to have reflective time as well, just to create output. So I tried not to beat myself up about it. I wasn't always successful.
I'm sure.
But around December, in 2020, it would have been, I started writing this and had some ideas. And I wrote it on a new DAW as well, because I'm used to using Logic. And so I wanted to use something completely different. So I got a copy of Ableton, started writing on there. And just sort of took it from there. And it took about 3 months to write it, and that was including learning how to use Ableton as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's interesting with the you mentioned about, productivity. I think you're right. We feels like we've kind of, society, we've kind of got defined. I know I had this in my, like, when I was, kind of like working in a corporate, that, kind of productivity is almost like defined by output, and we're just, if you're not doing it, it's really hard to reconcile. If you're not producing, creating something, producing it, you kind of feel inadequate.
Totally, yeah. I think it's like, or I mean, I don't know, it's just a funny thing, but I wonder if it's sort of all just tied up with like industrialization, do you know what I mean? And just sort of the fact that we're the workers, and that's our role on this planet.
Yeah.
Produce, to deliver output constantly.
it's kind of like, I don't know whether it's this old kind of work ethic of, kind of working hard, and working hard is sort of defined by kind of productivity. It's another of these kind of things that is defined us as a society, but doesn't kind of work for for lots of people now. I think perhaps because it's gone to such an extreme.
I definitely think it's a broken system, definitely. And I think one of the benefits of lockdown was that it forced a lot of people to take that step back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know it was difficult for a lot of people, because when you do take that step back, then you're only left of yourself, and you're only left with stuff that perhaps you may have been running away from. So, I'm obviously aware that mental health was absolutely rife during lockdown and stuff, and still to be. But I think in the long run, having that, for me personally, having that opportunity to step back and to stop and just be like, okay, so where am I now? And sort of like gather myself. I found that really, really, what's the word? Productive, helpful.
Yeah.
Helpful.
Yeah. I mean, did you find it easy to do that, or was that something that you maybe forced yourself, or kind of taught yourself to say, okay, I need to sort of do this?
I found it quite easy. I mean, I think I'm quite a self-reflective person anyway, and I'm into sort of personal growth and all of that, and what comes with that. I mean, I think that perhaps that's part of being an artist. I don't know. But so for me, it wasn't too difficult. The thing that sort of like got me though was that I didn't realize I needed a break until the break was forced on me.
Right. Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So
yeah,
I need to step back and do nothing.
I guess that's no, I hear. I mean, I guess that's another thing that we do. We kind of immerse ourselves in whatever it is, and it's only sort of when you stop, you start to think, okay, yeah, I need a break. I don't know if this is like we get kind of sort of swept away with, what's going on in the world. I mean, the thing is, we're just always getting this data that's coming into us. It's hard to kind of escape, isn't it?
Totally. And when everyone else is kind of like moving at the same pace, it's like you're caught up in the crowd and you can't.
Yeah.
I mean, you could stop and not move, but then there's some sort of, you feel a sense of resistance. So you just go with the flow of everyone else and just get caught up in it. And it can be quite detrimental to your well-being if you don't. Stop. Yeah.
I mean, to a large extent, I mean, we've kind of been, society has been a large part of society, I feel, have been, kind of keeping up with the Joneses and that, that sort of stuff. And it's so embedded, it's hard to, to sort of remove from that. But I do feel that, and perhaps this was, kind of COVID that changed this, that it's like, okay, well, you can't be sort of hurtling along at this breakneck pace, because we're living a lot longer. There are so many more things that are available to do, and you can't carry on at that kind of level. You just need to have time off for yourself.
We're not built for that.
No, we're not.
And you think we are, and we've reached a level of development in our society where we think that we're invincible. But I think we've just like jumped stages of evolution in terms of our capacity to deal with things. And and I think the world that we're living in is a world that we've created, that we have caught up with emotionally or psychically in order to navigate it healthily.
Yeah. Going back to your sort of younger day, when you were a kid and sort of growing up. I mean, I'm a sort of real. It's probably very obvious, but I'm a real believer in the the influences that we sort of have as a kid. Sort of stay, whether they're good or bad. They kind of stay with us and sort of subliminally or not so subliminally sort of affect us. I mean, what do you remember as your kind of formative influences that help sort of construct who you are now?
I would say, well, I think definitely what's had a huge influence is I am a Black woman growing up, and I grew up in a very white community. And I still live in a very white community, and that's had a huge influence, obviously, in and how I view the world, how I navigate the world. So that's definitely had huge influence. I think a lot of the music that my mum was playing when I was growing up has had a huge influence in my creative output. She used to play a lot of reggae when I was growing up, like things like Lovers Rock and dancehall and stuff like that. And I've found that even though the music I create isn't reggae music, it's almost like, you may not have picked up on this, but I can totally pick up on it. It's like an accent to my music. Like I'll inject, for example, vocal harmonies that sort of like come from there, or there'll be like a rhythm that comes from there, or a piano stab, even though the music is completely sort of like different. So that's had a huge influence in me as well. And I think as well, another thing that's probably had a big influence is growing up on a council estate, but I went to a public school as well. And that sort of like the two separate worlds and sort of like mixing separate worlds has had a huge influence as well.
How did you find that?
How did I find it?
I mean, you know, I think I know what you mean about those sort of separate worlds. When I kind of like, you know, when I left primary school, which is my local one, I went to a different school, you know, sort of public school, which is about 10 miles away. And it basically kind of broke me off with friends that I'd grown up with. You know, because by the time I got home from school, they'd done all their kind of playing and stuff like that. And, you know, I kind of felt excluded a little bit.
Right, I get what you mean. I think I had made some friends in the middle school, and then going on to high school, none of the friends joined me in high school. I did make some new friends, but they were the kind of the outcasts. You know, whose parents weren't rich enough to buy them hot air balloon lessons for birthday and things like that. Do you know what I mean? He didn't have a country, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think it's enabled me to mix in different circles, like you know, a positive from it. But I definitely did feel a sense of alienation, but it's something that I've felt my entire life growing up in Norwich as well. And I think that influences my music to a huge degree as well.
And with the you know, kind of kids that you were hanging out with, were you sort of drawn in any way to any sort of particular, you know, kind of groups of kind of like sort of people, or any different movements, you know, when you were younger?
Yeah, that was mostly when I left school. When I was at school, there were just like a few of us in the class who just kind of gravitated because we felt like outsiders. You know, so it was sort of, and we were always getting in trouble as well. It's awful, but it was just like, you know, I know, like with me, it was just kind of like I was rebelling against the system that I didn't realize I was rebelling against that system and the oppression of it all. So yeah, so we sort of like gravitated, me and a couple of other girls. But I sort of like, I think I sort of started to find the people who I really connected with on a sort of cultural level when I left school. And that was because, I mean, in Norwich at the time, there's a lot more Black people now, but there weren't many Black people then. So I sort of gravitated towards white people who understood Black culture,
Got you.
into like hip hop, or, you know, who grew up watching Fresh Prince and into soul and R&B and that sort of stuff. So that had a big influence. But then also at school, I was into a lot of I was into punk music as well, and into bands like the Smiths as well. yeah, and then I did the whole Nirvana grunge thing. So it's just kind of, do you know what I mean? It's just it's the influence being wide and varied, and yeah. And
what do you think that those kind of scenes that you were kind of hanging out in, or from the sort of music that you were, the kind of diverse music that you listened to? Obviously, kind of like, your mum was playing a lot of sort of reggae dancehall, and then you've got kind of your interest in sort of punk and the Smiths and Nirvana. So it's quite a kind of an eclectic bag, which really sort of shows through in your music now. That real kind of fusion of different sort of sounds. What do you think? Having all of that, really, did it teach you anything?
I think it taught me that everything's ripe for the taking.
I
think it taught me.
Yeah.
And I think as well, it's kind of, I'm quite grateful for it as well, because I don't want to just be seen as like a black girl who sings.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or sing people.
Absolutely.
Because I think a lot of white artists sort of tend to have a freedom to take from anything and become anything and create any sort of music. But I think sometimes as a black person you can be pigeonholed into a certain like genre. And I like the idea of being eclectic. I like the idea of taking from all sorts of influences and creating something new and something that is purely me, because those are my influences,
Yeah. Would you call yourself a curious person? Is curiosity sort of like something that really kind of drives you?
Interesting question. I've never thought about it. I do. Probably, yeah. I do. I question a lot. So, and I guess questioning is one of the symptoms of curiosity, is it not?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
So, yeah, I've never really thought of myself as a curious person, but yeah, I guess I probably am. Yeah.
It's interesting. I like I think curiosity is sort of one of the most valuable thing. I think it's one of the most valuable things you can have. It shows kind of, for me, it sort of shows like this kind of like open-mindedness that you're interested in learning about different things. I wonder sometimes that on one hand with kind of like the internet and sort of the information that's available to us, if it's sometimes easier for us to, if it makes us a little bit lazy to, because we can find out so much online without actually talking to people.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I wonder if it helps us, because it helps discovery, stuff that, instead of having to, go into town, go to the library, and sort of pick up a book to learn about something, it's actually there. So I don't know myself if.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think it does aid discovery, but there's also the presence of algorithms, isn't it? Which kind of like can
true,
conducive to discovery.
Yes.
Sort of like allow yourself to fall down that, and you can end up looking in your feed and constantly seeing the same thing, and then securing yourself in this little bubble.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
So yeah.
Algorithms are this.
Oh, sorry, carry on.
No, go on. No, go on. No.
Oh, I was going to say, sometimes down the pub, if we're having a conversation, we will sort of question something, and then we'll purposely not pick up our phones to find the answer, just so that we can like explore possibilities and stuff, like 90s stuff.
Yeah, no, it's right. I mean, I think it's one of the like really interesting things to do. Can you kind of survive on it without your phone? Does your brain just sort of becomes like this sort of mush? It's like, oh no, I've got to go for my phone and look for it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
It's good to. I do think it's almost like the, it's the thing that we kind of need, I think, to help. This world now is like so, kind of complex, that kind of curiosity is like really, really important to help I think just bring people together. We've become kind of quite divided, haven't we, as
yeah, definitely.
Kind of society.
Everything's so 50-50, isn't it? And everything's so binary, and it's
yeah.
You can't sort of question one thing without being automatically labeled as something else. Do you know what I mean? There's no room for discussion or for
Do you know, it was
dangerous, actually.
It was interesting. I've been reading. I think I'm becoming more, in a way, sort of more. I don't like to use the word sort of extreme. I'll tell you why. I've been reading a lot more of Chomsky's stuff. Who's basically kind of like an anarchist.
Mm.
And when I was a kid, like anarchy, I was like, kind of anarchy in the UK, and it's like, it's about kind of chaos, but kind of obviously it's not. It's sort of quite an orderly thing, and it's about obviously about redistribution on a much sort of fairer scale. But I was reading that there was a sort of section in one of his short books, and he said that a TV presenter or a show presenter in the US, think on like ABC or something like that, would never invite him onto his show because he's not concise. And it's like, okay, and that kind of sums it up. And he says, of course I can't be concise. What I've got to say can't be said in one sentence.
Yeah.
And it's to take your point about everything being so kind of like sort of binary. That's exactly the position that this TV presenter has, that it should be, and you just can't be these
days. In the media, don't you? They'll invite two panelists on, and they'll both have like opposing opinions, just so that they can both speak from this opposing viewpoint and not find some middle ground. It's the purpose of the thing is to, I think they should. And quite right.
And I mean. Yeah, and I mean, I think that that the point that you make about kind of like never finding a middle ground, particularly on those sort of things, on TV interviews. I mean, it's almost like empathy doesn't exist. I can't even understand what the other person is saying, or I don't want to. And there's never even any kind of like attempts. And I think that, and again, I think that empathy is one of the most important things that we kind of need to have.
But it's not taught in schools.
No, it's not. I know.
The STEM subjects all the way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even things like the arts funding's being cut for that and that. And there are subjects that encourage things like empathy and for creative thinking and stuff. And it's just, no, I completely agree. And I think as well, obviously social media like Twitter and stuff doesn't encourage empathy at all in the slightest. And I love Twitter. I use it all the time. It's violent as hell, like in terms of like like how people attack each other. But I do, I am partial to a bit of Twitter from now and then. So
I know.
I do see its flaws, definitely.
I mean, actually, sort of on that, I was talking in the episode that I've got out at the moment with Dimitri from the band Off. I was sort of talking about emotional intelligence, and obviously kind of empathy is sort of part of that. But in your sort of situation, in as far as sort of Sink Your Teeth goes, or other kind of bands that you've been involved with, or whatever sort of work you're doing, I mean, I think that kind of having that ability to, I mean, obviously there needs to be sort of decisions made, but also finding common ground to bring your perhaps different perspectives to a point where you can agree on it and sort of move forward. I mean, how important is that for you in what you're doing?
I think it's really important, and I think it's something that I learned through lockdown as well, like the importance, the real importance of that. I didn't realize how important it was for me to spend time with people who understood my background and understood who I was as a Black woman. And I think sort of like going back to that sort of like thing of lockdown forcing us to turn inwards and look inwards. I kind of realized the damage that being in situations where that wasn't the case had done, like on a psychological level, to me. I'm sort of like, yeah, and I think part of that was kind of like why I didn't write for about 9 months and stuff, because I was sort of processing all of that and my need for that due to sort of past racial trauma and stuff. So. So I think it's very important. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, have you found over over the years and with I guess kind of events of last year with with George Floyd, those extremely traumatic events, that you felt your own identity. I mean, I guess identity sort of shifts anyway, but have you felt big changes for yourself?
Yeah, I have. I've felt a real need to be in more Black spaces. I've definitely seen.
Yeah.
And just to sort of like be in spaces with people who understand and who have had the same experience. Definitely felt that need. I felt I've realized within myself that I don't have the mental capacity to find myself, or to spend too long in spaces where I'm not understood. Or so that's kind of like what's changed for me a little bit. It's kind of like it was always there, but it was sometimes situations can kind of remind you once again of something that you kind of like already knew, but perhaps hadn't paid too much attention to, or as much attention as you perhaps should have. So yeah, I'd probably say that.
Yeah, I mean, so I wonder if it's sort of that what has happened as sort of allowed you to, or been the trigger to understand what has happened before and thinking, okay, I accepted that, but now I'm not going to accept that. That's not working for me.
Yeah,
and I need something different, something more.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that's often what happens to people. You're sort of like you'll know something, but you won't know it on a cellular level until you've experienced something else that kind of like makes you know it on a deeper level. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like understand it on a deeper level. And I think the whole George Floyd thing was something, and I've spoken to like a few other Black people who have had similar sort of realizations and similar reached the sort of thing as well.
I mean, so it's the same for my partner Saskia. She's felt had this similar sort of experiences to you as well, and that sort of need, like you said, that sort of need to be among in spaces for Black people, that kind of really understand the sort of the experiences that you've had.
I think it's so important. I'm currently reading. Oh, I've got it just here. What a great book! Have you read it?
Let me see.
By Stephanie from Big.
Oh yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Really good. I'm about halfway through at the moment.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah. But she talks about Big Joni and how sort of like she was in the feminist punk scene in London, and although she found it that it was her crowd and stuff like that, she really felt a need to be amongst Black feminist punks. That's kind of, and she talks about the beauty of the music that comes out when you're free to be yourself, and without having to code switch, or without having to be apologetic for who you are. And that's kind of like what Big Journey is about, and I think that's great.
Do you feel that yourself, that it's an interesting one, that do you feel that's what you've either got now, or you're sort of getting towards, that sort of not apologizing, and perhaps sort of trusting you, or your gut instinct is becoming more important part of who you are?
I think so, yeah. I think we can often like have a gut instinct, but we're kind of like it's quite easy to go against that. I think sometimes like society can kind of almost train us to second guess ourselves. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like there's kind of like this fear of ostracization. Is that the right word?
Ostracization. It sounds good to me. I'll take that.
The fear of being ostracized. We'll call that. Or like a fear of being outcast from the group, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? So I think like because of that, we can often sort of like second guess our instincts and put them to one side and sort of like lay them. And I think I've definitely been guilty of that in the past. And it's obviously not anything that's specific to colour. It's something I think that everyone's probably experienced at some point, until you reach a point where you suddenly realise, actually, no, I was right then, and I should have sort of like listened to, how I was feeling and given myself the what's the word? The license to feel what I was feeling, and to just go with that, because there's a wisdom in us that we're not taught to listen to. And I think it's really
I totally agree. I mean, I've been the same as well. There's been many occasions where my instinct has told me one thing and I've done the other.
Yeah.
because I think that's what somebody else wants to hear.
Yeah.
And it's the most self-destructive, kind of waste of time. Doing that. I think thinking about what other people think. That's why. I remember, like in one of my earlier episodes, and talking to Meredith Graves, and she said something which really kind of like sticks with me. And she just has these, and she's been verbally attacked, for kind of who she is and what she's done and stuff like that. And her words were, "Who told you that?"
Yeah, I listened to that one. Yeah.
And I think that was just great. It's just simple, and it's like these things that are going on in your head, saying well, what do you think they will say? It's like, well, what bearing does that person have on my life? Nothing. But and still, do it.
Totally, and a phrase like "who told you that," it's just it acts like a sort of knife that just cuts through your thinking, because sometimes we can get so clear to have that sort of phrase to be like,
absolutely.
Bring you back down again.
Bring you back down, and we're also that I think, like for me, the times that I've trusted my instinct, it might have been wrong a few times, but nothing that's really done me any sort of damage.
But then damage is an interesting thing as well, because even I think that you always end up in the right place anyway, and if you don't trust your instinct, the journey will be a lot more painful, but you'll have a deeper understanding of why you are where you are now, and you know what I mean. So it can be, like I've learned things from not trusting my instinct that I now know on a deeper level, and it's unlikely that I'll make those same mistakes or similar mistakes, because I've really felt the effects of not doing that. I guess it just kind of depends on how you look at it, really, doesn't it?
I mean, I guess that learning from mistakes, and mistakes is another interesting one as well, isn't it? It's funny when you start to think about kind of like the way that life is now, and you were almost like, well, I was at least anyway, sort of taught about, these are mistakes, it's like, you can't do that, but it's like, okay, well, who's defined what they are? That might be what you perceive a mistake to be, but really, do I think of it as a mistake? Maybe not. I just wonder if there's a lot of things that that we've grown up with and now are in need of kind of redefining.
I completely agree. And language and I
mean, language and words in particular, I think absolutely. I think they're definitely in need of a revamp. I really do think so. I have no idea how to go about it, but just some of the stuff that it just doesn't seem right anymore. you're in your music world. You're a big collaborator, with sort of working with with different artists. And what I mean, for one thing, that shows your incredibly powerful mindset, that you're kind of open to these sort of collaborations. What do you feel that those sort of give you, those collaborations?
Most of the collaborations that I've done have actually been online. I'd like to do some more sort of like face-to-face collaborations.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting to try and work with someone else and try and maintain a sense of who you are, and maintain a sense of who they are, and trying to find sort of like the common ground and the point where both of those identities merge and create something new. I think that's the fun aspect of collaboration. But like as I say, I've often just done it online with people, sort of send in a bit of music, and then I'll do some vocals over the top, or I might do like a remix, or just it'd be nice to sort of like actually sit in a room and because before I was in Sink Your Teeth, I was a solo artist as well. Under the name Girl and Thunderbolt. So once again, I was mostly working by myself. There were times when I sort of put together a band, sort of like playing, but it was just to play my music, So, so yeah, it'd be interesting to sit in a room and collaborate with someone. I think
to do the face-to-face stuff. I mean, I think I agree. I think that I think they are. I think there's collaborations can be really sort of powerful in whatever part of our life. I'm reading it's a sort of book about it was about Detroit and the kind of regeneration that was going on in a particular sort of neighborhood that had been kind of devastated. And the whole kind of story, is about kind of like taking basically kind of derelict land and land that had been just abandoned, and taking that back for the people that were still living in the area. And it's like it sounds really kind of simple, but I just felt that it was really sort of powerful that people with kind of common sort of interests and values were able to just kind of come together. And it was just about kind of, it was about improving their kind of community. I just found it really powerful. And kind of,
what's the name of the community
it was called the Georgia Street Community Collective.
And when was this?
This was it's probably talking about when this was set up. What was the guy's name? Mark somebody, I can't remember his surname, but it was probably around about 2013, 2014 when this was sort of set up. So I think it was after definitely after the kind of credit crisis of 2008, and then there were various kind of political kind of scandals in Detroit, and then there's the whole kind of like, I mean, the population had been dwindling for several years, for many years, I should say, and buildings were just in the city center, in the downtown area, just becoming sort of derelict. But that was another thing that was kind of interesting, was those buildings essentially being repurposed for use. So they weren't being knocked down; they were being basically kind of transformed into spaces for other use. I just have a bit of a fascination with Detroit, to be honest with you.
Spaces for, were they? I mean, like, were they used as art spaces? Were they what sort of?
Yeah, for sort of local businesses, encouraging kind of entrepreneurship. So one thing that I thought was sort of particularly interesting for that was that it seemed to have learnt from this point about diversification. It put all its kind of eggs into the automobile industry, and then that collapsed, and then that just basically kind of collapsed the city. So I think it was encouraging this sort of diversification to help and encourage entrepreneurs to set up their own sort of businesses. Yeah, I think it kind of shows for me, like the power of, kind of connecting as human beings.
Yeah. I read something similar, a similar situation that happened in Germany. I'm not sure if it was in Berlin, but it was the same sort of. It was a community that came about through an elderly lady was in a flat on a council estate, and she couldn't afford to pay her rent, so she put a notice up on her door that just said, I may sort of like, this may be the last time you see me, because I may choose to move on from this mortal coil. And the community sort of like came together to help her with I can't really remember, but from that, I think the council were wanted to knock down some buildings or something, and then they sort of like worked out this shift of where they'd get a couple of people from the community to sit in this space where they've got this blockade to stop the council from knocking down the thing. So you'd get these people like a single mother sitting with a 60-year-old housewife, and then you'd get like a 14-year-old boy from school doing a night shift with a 38-year-old shop worker and stuff. And the conversation came from that, and the sense of and finding common ground. And from that, I wish I could remember the name of the community, but from that they started to then build their own businesses. So it sounds like it was a similar sort of
similar sort of thing.
Of the community reclaiming the
I like that. I like that example that you've used there, actually, because that sort of shows more kind of collaboration between generations as well, between sort of different age groups, which I guess I always think, you look at some product marketing, and it's just so, from kind of corporates, it's so, kind of focused on this particular kind of age group, and where you can, and I guess a society, it's like, well, you can't look like that because you're 60 years old, and you can't look like that, blah, blah, blah. And, it kind of like forces it.
It's just, Sorry, I interrupted because
no, not at all. No. I think you're totally right.
One thing that I hate is being put in a box. Do you know what I mean? It's just, I find it so it doesn't aid growth, because you're constantly and who's created the box and for whom? Just, I don't know. It's like we think that we have to put ourselves in boxes. We think that we have to live in a certain way, and we're constantly sort of like just perpetuating what came before without even questioning whether or not it's serving us.
So you've mentioned personal growth, a couple of times, which is obviously sort of important to you. What kind of areas are you interested in? How does your sort of personal growth?
Right.
What does it look like?
I think for me, a lot of it is probably to do with complete self-acceptance. I feel like that's something that I had before I started school. Like my earliest memories could sort of go back to being 6 months. So I have I remember a lot of before I started school when I was 4 years old. And I felt that when I was 4, I had a really strong sense of who I was, not just as a human, but as a being, as a spiritual being. And then I feel that I then sort of like entered society at the age of 4, and then started to, and I know I'm not alone. You're sort of nodding.
I understand.
But then you sort of like enter the society, and then you start to shut down certain parts of yourself in order to conform. And that, so I think for me, personal growth is about returning to that place of where I was when I was 4. Because like people say, like or we sort of like, we expect that as we get older we learn more, but I think I'm just relearning what I already knew when I was 4 years old. There's a different intelligence and a different wisdom that we kind of, that we're sort of not encouraged to develop or explore as we get older. And so my growth is all about sort of returning to that, I think.
How far along that road are you with self-acceptance?
Comes and goes. I mean, I think with any journey, it's not like that. It's sort of like it's kind of up and down, isn't it? But it's on the whole, it's kind of like heading upwards. I'm going to say something that might sound a bit sort of like woo, but I've got a balcony just out there, and about 6 months ago, I was sitting on the balcony, and I felt that I met myself when I was 60. I know that might sound really strange.
No.
But it's kind of like almost like a sort of like I wasn't time traveling, but it was kind of like I can't explain it, like a conscious. I don't know. Sometimes there aren't words.
It's hard to,
But I felt like I sort of like I met myself when I was 60, and my 60-year-old self looked at me and was just sort of like saying, "What are you?" You know, she was smiling and she was just like saying, "What are you? What's your problem? Why you need to snap out a bit? What's your like?" And so I'm sort of like aware that I will get there, because I've kind of like seen it already. But it's which is quite encouraging.
Do you think your that 60-year-old you was saying that you were being introspective?
And I think she was also saying there's no need for it, and you're going to go all the way around the houses being introspective, and then you'll come to this place where you're just like, I didn't actually need to do any of that in my life because I was always there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Always there. So I think that's kind of like what I'm realizing. But even though I know that intellectually, it's almost like I need to act it out in order to know it. Going back to that thing, know it on a deeper level, you know, on a cellular.
It's that's really interesting. I think you know, self-acceptance is it's really important, right? Isn't it? You know, I mean, I think you know, it's almost like perhaps the bedrock, you know, of being of this personal growth that you know that we talked about. You know, about you know, accepting yourself for who you are. You know, kind of what you do. It's like going back, okay, you're right. You know, when you're a kid, when you know, a youngster, almost like before, at that purer stage, before society kind of starts to, you know, influence you.
Yeah.
What else is there to do apart from accept yourself? Because that's you are who you are.
Yeah, and you look at cats as well, and you know, they're the perfect examples of self-acceptance.
Absolutely.
You know,
a couple of stretches in the background there. That's it.
But I think like mine sort of like came from growing up in a community where I wasn't accepted. At a time when there weren't many sort of Black role models on TV as well. So I think that's kind of what's created this journey that I'm on.
Yeah. How do you think that you know we can sort of shift other people's, I mean, this is probably an impossible question to answer, but we can shift other people's mindsets so that you know, we're kind of creating things that are almost creating things with that kind of lens of equality, you know, and creating them for everybody instead of the kind of the few. It's impossible to answer, isn't it? Yeah. Let's scrap that one. That's a difficult one. That's in the too difficult box.
Yeah, I don't have an idea about that. I mean, I do think, sort of going back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of face-to-face communication. I'm not saying that I think that this is the answer, but I do think that it's an answer, and I think it's a step in the right direction. Even to the point of, you know, like if you walk down the street and you pass someone in the street, just smile and say hello. You know, that's one, that might be the only sort of real life connection that someone has all day.
True.
You know, we're constantly like on our screens, and then we're sort of like, you know, walking down the street, headphones on and whatever, and it's just, you know, so just stepping outside of that from time to time and just sort of like, hello.
There is a I do feel sometimes that you know, like you said earlier, you know, that you go on Twitter and it's this or this. When you do talk to people, and if you have a difference of opinion, if you talk to them, you know, kind of one-on-one, not in a kind of room where there's the almost like the sort of the backing of other people, but sort of one-on-one, that is your chance to establish some common ground.
Definitely, yeah.
And you know, in many, I feel in many sort of situations that the again, this kind of empathy, there is the possibility of the chance of compromise is more possible than if you're not face to face.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, and you're less likely to be called the C word as well. And
yes, that's true. Yes,
because that often happens as well. And it's just
yeah,
it's, yeah, definitely people more up for listening to each other and having more of a dialogue. And I think social media, and particularly Twitter, is there to just sort of like make people to what's the word, reestablish people's viewpoints. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're that's all people go on there for, basically. It's like, I think this, and they want other people to back them up. That's as a way of ego boosting, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think, you know, if someone's not prepared to do that, then that's when you get like the C words and the effing and the blinding and all that sort of stuff.
Yes, that sort of like self-regulation kind of goes out of the window.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah.
How comfortable are you with like an uncertainty in your life, in kind of like, and obviously I think, you know, because of, you know, let's take music for just as an example. For, you know, last year with COVID, I mean, extremely uncertain time. And probably in my lifetime one of the most uncertain periods that there's been. How do you deal with uncertainty, and are you relaxed around it?
Right about it, actually. I think with uncertainty comes possibility.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's part of that thing of like, you know, not wanting to be put in the box. I think like certainty is a box, isn't it? Or it can be. Uncertainty
can be
kind of, it's, yeah, there's more possibilities. It can allow you to allow your brain to wander, allow your yeah, and it's I don't have a problem with that. I think it can be quite refreshing sometimes.
Quite refreshing.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes depends on the kind of level
because
of
I'm thinking
uncertainty,
about sort of like, you know, obviously there's places in the world where, you know, which are war torn and stuff, and the uncertainty of those sort of environments is obviously not something that I'd want to experience ever. So, but in the safety of little old England, I think, you know,
yeah,
and where I am, I think uncertainty can be quite refreshing.
Does that help you with your you know, sort of music creation, do you think, in you know, in terms of, you know, pushing boundaries and doing different things that, okay, I'm maybe if I do this, I'm not sure what the reaction or the response would be? Do you think that?
What do you mean, in terms of putting music out, or in terms of creating music?
Creating music, yeah. I'm thinking if you know, if you've got a level of comfort with uncertainty, you know, so you're uncertain, for example, how people would react if you started, you know, changing musical direction, for example, or bringing in new influences that people haven't heard before.
I think I'm all right with it. I think with my solo stuff that I wrote after Sink Your Teeth, I think I kind of was aware that some of that may not appeal to the Sink Your Teeth market, because they were sort of like more used to a certain sort of, you know, fall to the floor kind of dance, Chicago, whatever. So I kind of, but I feel that it's, for me, it was important, and it still is in my writing, to do what feels right for me in terms of creative output. And I always remember David Bowie said something, which is really, I think David Bowie is a god, by the way.
Yeah, you're a big fan of him, aren't you? Yeah, for sure.
Such an amazing person. But he once said, never play to the gallery, because you'll find that you create your worst work if you do that. And I think that's something that's kind of like stuck in my head, because sometimes it can be difficult to follow that, going back to that sort of like fear of being rejected. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think all humans have. You know, I think it's a survival instinct. But I think if you're able to try and bypass that, it's not bypassing an instinct, is it? No, we're not like going back on ourselves, are we?
No, we're not. No.
Okay. Yeah, we're all just full of shit. Can I say that?
You can do, yes, it's totally fine. Yeah, yes, it's all ages, explicit, blah blah. The warning's wrong. It's fine.
But yeah, I think if we were able to sort of like bypass that and realize that sometimes that feeling of fear of being ostracized can be useful for us, and it can be a survival thing. So a lot of the time, it's not necessary. It's through stepping out of our comfort zones and trying something new that we can. That's how we grow. You know, we're not going to grow if we stay in this little box that we're not doing anything new every day. You know?
When you sort of first got on stage on your own as a solo artist, did you find how did that? I mean, was that comfortable for you? Did you find it sort of different to sort of not having Gemma there with you?
I did. I mean, I was a solo artist before. Well, my first band was actually a punk band called Incidental. So that was sort of about 2005 to 2007. And I used to sing and play guitar in that. And then the band got booked for a gig, but we'd broken up by then. So the bookers said, well, why don't you play it solo? So that was actually my first sort of like solo.
Right.
In 2007, 2008 or something.
Yeah.
And I don't remember being, I mean, I may have been nervous. It may have been a problem. I don't really remember. But I feel comfortable in both, you know, and having played some solo gigs this year as well. It's different, sort of like not having someone else on stage to kind of like rely on and to sort of like take the pressure off if you just want to sort of sit back. Well, sometimes when you're a singer you can't really sit back, but you know what I mean, singer and
I know what you mean.
But you know, it's kind of but it's I'm happy doing both.
Do you what about taking risks? You know, do you find yourself I say risk, how to, you know, like either in terms of the sort of the music that you're kind of creating or other sort of parts of your life? Because I think that I'm kind of thinking perhaps more, I'm thinking of people who are in sort of paid jobs that you know, have like, you know, kind of financial responsibilities and blah blah and all this kind of stuff, and it gets a little bit harder to force yourself to take risks. How do you find your relationship with risk taking?
I think I've purposely chosen a lifestyle that isn't too expensive or isn't expensive. So that allows me to take risks because I've got less to lose. You know, I've got a really low mortgage, and my outgoings are very, you know, I'm not a very extravagant person. So I think, I think if I had a huge, you know, house and big car and all this sort of stuff, to take risks. But I think I've purposely chosen not that. And I think
that sorry, go on. No, go on.
No, carry on.
I was just going to say, so you know, kind of lifestyle choices are, you know, kind of important. You know, you know, you're absolutely right that they kind of, you know, financial worries, you know, can be, you know, can prey on sort of people's minds very, very obviously. But sort of sometimes, you know, taking those sort of choices as to your lifestyle, not to, go extravagant, or to, kind of create this sort of mortgage which becomes a millstone and things like that, can allow us the sort of the freedom to, to take risks in other parts of our lives, I guess. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
I think I've always just been on this journey of self-discovery since I was a child, I think. And my boyfriend as well, like, he's on the same journey as well. So it's kind of good that we've met, and we're both sort of at a stage where, we're not one of us is sort of trying to climb the corporate ladder while the other one is, I think we're both on this journey of self-discovery.
On this sort of journey, yeah. So what's coming next for you then? On the kind of the music front.
Yeah, next. Well, I've been working on some remixes, which will be out. I've been working on some collaborations as well, but the first one was done about 1.5 years ago. But I don't think that's out until next month. With an artist called Chris Liebing, who's a German techno producer.
Yeah.
And there's a few others which haven't been announced yet, so I sort of can't talk about those.
Can't say about those. Yeah.
I'm working on an album at the moment. Which I'm really excited about. I've kind of got this clear vision of what it's going to be about, and you talk about taking risks. It's really exciting and really really excited.
Do you feel like you're pushing the boundaries with this one?
I do, yeah.
And brilliant.
It's come out of the journey that I've been on over the last couple of years, and over lockdown, and I think that's what makes it exciting because suddenly there's cohesion to all the chaos, and like this crystalline sort of idea of what I want to do with that. And
wow, that's incredible.
I'm excited about that.
How does it feel being at that sort of stage, and with almost with that kind of realization that of what you're achieving now?
It feels good, and I think it goes back to that thing of, like, when we were saying that what is a mistake, and it's kind of like I've been through something that was hard at the time, but I hadn't been through that, and if I had perhaps followed instincts, then I wouldn't find myself where I am now with this exciting project that I'm currently embarking on. So so it's all good in the end.
It's all good in the end. It all worked out, didn't it?
Exactly.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic, Maria. Thanks so much. I'm really when is that gonna? When do you think that will be?
Oh, I have no idea.
No.
I don't know if it's going to be self-released. I like the idea of self-releasing. But if I do, I'll have to look into funding for PR and things like that. But I like the idea of, like, owning your output.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that
Little Sims, who does that, and a really successful career out of that. So, but I'm thinking, I guess, summer, sort of around that sort of time.
Brilliant.
Final situation as well.
Of course. Do you know this keeps coming up? This situation keeps coming up with new releases that it was supposed to be out 6 months ago. Oh,
crazy. Yeah.
Oh God.
But anyway, I interrupted you so many times. Go ahead.
I can't remember what I was saying now. What I was saying. Oh yeah, it was like this idea of self-releasing. I mean, that's been I guess one thing that we didn't really talk about was this kind of DIY approach that you have and that you love, which really seems to really work for you. Yeah. It's
something that I like, the idea of ownership of your art. And I like the idea of working with other people and choosing those people that you work with who understand what you're trying to say, and like what you're trying to say, and appreciate what you're trying to say. To sort of being with a big label who are only interested in the bottom line, So and need to do some more exploration on models of doing that.
I mean, it's interesting you say that about kind of when you're collaborating with the people that you want to, and the people that you like doing that. I mean, I've kind of found this with the, with this podcast, is choosing isn't the right word, but kind of having guests on that that I like, I respect, and I'm not being forced to go a sort of certain direction. It's almost like it sort of feels that the people that I have on line up with my values.
Yeah,
which
totally.
I think is one of the most important things that you can have for that kind of self-happiness,
and also clarity of values as well. And I think that's another reason why it's so important for us to slow down and to step back, so that we can understand what our values are, and even realize we've got them. Some people don't even know that they have them because they don't question those sort of things. So
that's very true. Yeah. Well, listen, Maria, thank you so much. It's been phenomenal talking to you.
It's been really nice. Thank you, Giles.
Yeah, no, it's great. Thanks so much for coming on. And well, best of luck for the for the writing, for the for the album. I'm sure there'll be more sort of coming out, and with any kind of live shows that you've got. Look forward to catching up with you again anyway.
Thank you. Yeah, you too. Take it
easy. All right. Thanks, Maria. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the show, and I really hope that you enjoyed it and that you'll tune in for the next episode. In the meantime, it would be really awesome if you could rate and review the show, and also share it with any friends who you think might enjoy it.